Hello, everybody. It is a great day in Chattanooga, Tennessee. It's a hot day, though. Really, really, really hot. I was cooking in my car on the way over here. This is Clutch with Keon Rose. I'm Keon Rose. Thank you for joining me today. We are all over the internet. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. You search Hot News Talk Radio, we are the first thing that comes up, and you can listen to old episodes. Well, old, classic episodes of this show, The Digital Drive, The David Tulis Show, The Mr. Judd Show, and you can see what we look like. You can interact with us on Facebook and Twitter. We would love to hear from you. My Twitter handle is @SportsCloud. If you want to tweet during games with me, I lob out random tweets over the course of the day as well. But I got a game coming up on Thursday there. The Redskins are going to be playing the Giants on Thursday Night Football. So if you want to see extreme reactions, extreme knee-jerk reactions, highly irrational knee-jerk reactions to a game that is being played hundreds of miles from where I am and over which I have zero influence, if you would like to see how badly that goes regularly, join me on Twitter when the Redskins play the Giants on Thursday night. My Twitter handle is @SportsCloud. I think the big topic of today, the one that everyone's talking about and that you have to talk about, is that Yogi Berra, the baseball legend and New York Yankees great, has passed away today at the age of 90. And the news has gone around the entire sports world, and everyone's talking about it because Yogi Berra was such a legend. He had an incredible legacy that he left behind. I mean, I don't think any single player has been to more World Series than him. He's one of the winningest players in baseball history. And I feel awkward talking about Yogi Berra today for a couple of reasons. One, when Yogi Berra was at the height of his powers, baseball was the sport in the United States of America. It has been since surpassed by football. And you can't help but think that if Yogi Berra had passed away on a Sunday night or a Monday morning, how much that would have been overshadowed by the action that took place in the NFL and college football in the previous 2 days. Yogi Berra has passed away in the middle of the week, and so we have the time and the distance from the thing that we want to talk about him and how great he was, which is unfortunate in a lot of ways, but it just shows how much the times have changed. That baseball was once king. Yogi Berra passing away is a big deal today and would have been an even bigger deal before. And I feel awkward talking about Yogi Berra today for a couple of reasons. But the biggest reason that I feel awkward talking about Yogi Berra is that at the age of 25, I never watched him play. I never watched Yogi Berra play, not a single inning. I have old things that I can watch to see how great he was, but I cannot say that I have watched Yogi Berra play. And you cannot underestimate how much not seeing a guy influences your opinion of him and where he ranks all time. One of two things tends to happen when there is a guy who is great and nobody has seen him play. One of two things tends to happen. Either we downplay his accomplishments because we did not see them, and compared to some of the amazing things that we see now, we see a lot of incredible athletes in baseball today. I mean, monsters out there. Cespedes and Trout and Harper. I mean, you got some crazy guys out there playing baseball today. But because of how athletic we see these guys and how recently and how fresh their feats are in our minds, it's very easy to go back to previous generations and downplay what what previous athletes have done, what athletes have done before we were born or before we had the chance to see them. And I'm very appreciative of guys like ESPN's Tim Kirkjian, who did get to see Berra play and have gone on the record just talking about how great of a baseball player Yogi Berra was. I appreciate that commentary because to me, that's the real deal. I have a lot of respect for that. I have less respect for guys who, I'm 25, but if you were in your 30s and 40s, I mean, you didn't see Berra play either. So I have a lot of respect for guys that did see him play and are able to recount the many great things that he was able to do on and off the baseball field. Yogi Berra was considered to be a great human being and a kind person off the baseball field as well. And he managed the Yankees and the Mets to World Series. I mean, not just as a player, but as a coach, he was able to get it done. And I didn't get to see him play, which that's one of my, if I had a time machine, what would I go back and do? Well, one thing I would like to do is go back and watch a lot of the old baseball legends. I'd go back and I'd want to see Babe Ruth, and I'd want to see Yogi Berra, and I'd want to see Satchel Paige in the Negro Leagues. I would like to go back and see these things. And I feel like our generation has missed out on a lot of that with a different kind of person that was alive back then. Yogi Berra fought in World War II. He was in a boat that capsized on D-Day. And he was also a heck of a baseball player when he came back. We don't have that. We specialize in sports now. That's the main job that you go out to do. And so inside of Yogi Berra's legacy is all of the great things that he was not only able to accomplish on the baseball field, but off it. And I am not qualified necessarily to talk about it. And none of us are. But here's the thing. We downplay the previous generation. That's the other thing that happens. But another thing that happens, okay, is that instead of downplaying, we build up to astronomical proportions the records of the past that nobody is ever going to be better than Wilt Chamberlain in the eyes of some people that saw him play. You could not surpass him. You have that conversation. Wilt is the greatest center of all time, or is Shaq the greatest center of all time? And nothing that Shaq has ever done will ever surpass anything that Wilt has ever done. And I understand that Wilt played in a different time. Wilt scored 100 points in a game, but he also played in a time where basketball wasn't the full-time job that you know it to be, that you didn't make millions off of it, that it wasn't specializing in it. Most of the people that Wilt played against were much tinier than he was. I mean, the times were different. But I think that the reality of both of those situations is somewhere closer to the middle. And I think a lot of people are downplaying what Yogi Berra did. And part of it is unfortunate because Yogi Berra played on the same team with guys like Mickey Mantle. And the Yankees are an organization that have had so many great players in its past, both before Berra and after, that we kind of lose him a little bit in the shuffle. And you start to hear the discussions now that Derek Jeter has retired. Who is the greatest Yankee, and is Derek Jeter greater than Yogi Berra? And maybe in the idea of what it takes to be a New York Yankee, because the Yankees do have this mythos about them. They have this aura. They are the rich team. They win all the time. They're professionals. You play for the New York Yankees, you don't grow facial hair. They shave. All of them shave, and it's things like that you have this air about the Yankees, that there's something about being a captain of the New York Yankees. Like, is Derek Jeter the greatest Yankee? He might be remembered as the greatest Yankee, But who's the better baseball player? A lot of the people that got to see Yogi Berra play will tell you it's Yogi Berra. And I am reticent to believe that because I didn't get to see Yogi Berra play, like I said, but I did get to see Jeter play. Derek Jeter is my Yogi Berra. If I should get older in life, many years down the line, and outlive Derek Jeter, when that happens, I will be talking about Derek Jeter the way that people are talking about Yogi Berra today. So that it's a personal issue of generations. And that's the reason why the discussion can sometimes get so confrontational and can sometimes, or why it's even happening at all. Why the discussion is even happening at all is because it is literally one generation pitted against another generation, one generation saying my guy is better, and another generation saying, no, my guy is better. And in the end, we don't have them ever playing against each other. They didn't play in the same time period. They didn't play in the same era. To pit them against each other like that is not only irrational and unreasonable, but it seems to be the very point of what a sports conversation is about. That we are irrational and unreasonable people. That's what we do. We dwell in the hypothetical entirely. We break down the reality, you know. It's fun to predict the Super Bowl and say this team's going to beat that team. And then when we get the actual facts and we get the reality, we break that down too. But which conversation was more fun, before or after? It's always before. We love the hypothetical. We love to think about what would have happened if Mike Tyson ever got to fight Muhammad Ali. Do you know why? Because they never fought. Simply because it never happened, that's a more interesting conversation than talking about how Buster Douglas upset Mike Tyson, how Buster Douglas beat Mike Tyson in a fight that nobody gave Buster Douglas a chance in beating him. The more interesting conversation is who would win in a fight between Ali and Tyson. We love the hypothetical. And here we are pitting Jeter against Berra. And I was looking at the numbers this morning to see, who was the better baseball player. You can't learn everything from the numbers, but the numbers are a way of looking at things. Okay? And I looked at the numbers this morning and I realized that playing less years, Yogi Berra went to more World Series and won more than Derek Jeter, which I don't typically subscribe to the ring counting argument, right? That Michael Jordan is better than LeBron James because he's got 6 rings, lol. No, that doesn't. It's a team game, okay? Yes, he has 6 rings, which counts to something. But that's not the end of the argument because he did not win them by himself. He won them on a great team. So I don't subscribe to ring counting arguments. But Derek Jeter hasn't won as much as Yogi Berra has. And then when you look down to the individual statistics, Yogi Berra has more hits. And he's got about 90 more hits than Jeter does. It's not all that close. It's 350 hits to Jeter's 260, or home runs rather. And he's also got more hits. Jeter's got a better batting average and a better on-base percentage. But in terms of scoring runs, the slugging percentage of Berra, the hits that he's got, and having more home runs, just based on offensive output alone, Yogi Berra's the better guy. Yogi Berra's the better guy. And I say that about the guy who's going to be this generation's Derek Jeter. This is the guy. And if you had the opportunity to watch Yogi Berra play, make sure that you tell the young ones around you what it was like, who may not remember the time when baseball was great. And Yogi was good for a lot of other things too. He had Yogi-isms, that Yogi Berra would say things that on surface level seem to make no sense. And then when you think about them, they make a little bit more sense. For instance, he said, 90% of the time, the game is half mental. It's just like quirky phrases like that. Another one that he said was, he was talking about a restaurant in St. Louis, Ruggieri's, and he said nobody goes there anymore. It's too crowded. That the fact that this place that nobody goes to anymore, nobody goes to because everybody is going there. It's interesting. But another thing that Yogi Berra said was, make sure that you go to everyone's funeral, or else they won't go to yours. But I don't know whether or not Yogi Berra went to everyone's funeral, but I do know that he was a great man, and today everyone will be going to his. This is Clutch with Keon Rose on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio.
Compass Media Network's coverage of the NFL. Hi, this is Jerry Recco. Join Kevin Ray, Danny White, myself for all the action.
Hot News Talk 1240.
If it's the NFL, it's right here.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Hot News Talk 1240.
That smells so good. Smells like a the big Italian dinner. But you're going to walk out with two. Buy one hot pizza, get a one for free. Two pizzas. You got the two for the price of one at Raphael's Italian Restaurant and Pizzeria. My favorite Italian restaurant of all the time. Now, I'm living in Hickson. I go to Raphael's right down the street in Hickson Pike, right near Highland Plaza. You're in Saudi Daisy? Raphael's Italian Restaurant and Pizzeria in Saudi Daisy. Just next to Saudi Daisy Church of God. Hey, you're on Signal Mountain. There's a Raphael's Italian Restaurant and a Pizzeria. It's right on the main drag. You're going to love the pasta, the pizza. Buy one hot pizza, get a one for free. Two pizzas. You got the two for the price of one at Raphael's Italian Restaurant and Pizzeria. Tastes so good. Bring the whole family. Come on, Raphael's Italian Restaurant and Pizzeria. Mangia. Salute.
Tired of insurance companies? Tired of doctors that won't spend time with you? Do something different. Leave the sick care model of medicine and come to Dr. Danielle Mitchell, the Chattanooga Sports Institute and Center for Health, where we're interested in long-term health solutions, not the quick fixes. Come see me, Dr. Danielle Mitchell, at the Chattanooga Sports Institute and Center for Health. I'm all about the long-term healthcare solutions and doing what's best. On the web, you can find me at ChattanoogaSportsInstitute.com. That's ChattanoogaSportsInstitute.com. Or call us at 875-1005, 875-1005, or find us on social media, Facebook, Dr. Danielle Mitchell, or the ChattanoogaSportsInstitute.com. Let's go, y'all!
Are you tired of working in corporate America, or have you recently lost your job and would like to consider owning your own business? If you are, please call me, as I can help you look at franchises or business opportunities that fit you, the economy that we're in, and the type of businesses that are right in the greater Chattanooga area. After I help my clients find the right opportunity, I also help them find the best way to finance the business, including paying yourself through the startup phase. If you would like to learn more about opportunities that may be right for you, please call me for a free assessment. My name is Bruce Krebs at the Entrepreneur Source. Phone number is 423-875-5621.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Costa, host of the Costa Report, every Sunday at 9 a.m. My guest this week is former Congresswoman and candidate for the presidency, Miss Michelle Bachmann, who'll be here to talk about just how big a role beliefs play in forging public policy. Don't miss the always controversial Michelle Bachmann this Sunday at 9 a.m. on the Costa Report on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Hot News Talk 1240.
Perception is reality, and as we find out more and more, that what you see as far as an audience goes, especially because this is sports, so all of the attention, all of the money, all of the things that you see, the fame that a lot of these guys get, are driven by the fact that they have eyeballs on them, that people sit down and watch them do what they do because they do it well. And what we perceive to be the truth regardless of what actually happens, in a lot of cases, is the truth. That we just run with it. What we believe to be the truth is actually the truth. And that sounds vague and confusing, but I'll explain it in a second. Cam Chancellor of the Seattle Seahawks has ended his holdout with the team. And he had some leverage in the negotiations. He had a 3-year contract left with the team. He just negotiated it last season, and he wanted it renegotiated. He saw other guys on the team were getting paid a little bit more, and he decided to renegotiate, which is perfectly fine. You have negotiations, and you know what? If you want more money and you have the leverage to negotiate it, by all means, go ahead and try. But his leverage was based on the team losing. And it was interesting to see, because here's an athlete whose job it is to win. And he's playing in a team sport where you want the success of other people on that team. And in order for you to get what you want, which is more money, which you have every right to negotiate, because I'm not going to be on the side of the billionaires. I mean, if the man is doing a job and he feels like he can get more money and he feels like there's a way that he can try to go get it, I'm not going to be opposed to that. You don't get what you deserve in life. You get what you have the leverage to negotiate, as Jalen Rose always says. That's just a fact. And he felt like he had the leverage to negotiate that, and he did, so long as he was willing to stand by and watch his team lose game after game. Now, it's hard to say that they would have lost next week. They're playing the Bears, and the Bears have they're not good. They're pretty bad, and they lost Jay Cutler last week, and Jimmy Clausen will be starting at quarterback, so they went from bad to worse. It's not pretty what's happening for the Bears, and I find it very difficult to say that the Seahawks would even have lost that game without Cam Chancellor. So he does lose a little bit of leverage there, but to fall behind too far in the league, and because you wanted more money, it's a rough thing to do. It's a hard thing to be able to do. But the thing is, Cam Chancellor has already lost money. He was not paid for either game that he played in. And NFL players are paid on a per game basis. So it's not hourly, it's weekly. You don't show up to the game, you don't get paid. So he missed out on a couple of $100,000, okay, for not showing up to the game, to play in it. And he had, for me, I want to know how weak was this holdout? Like how long did he plan on holding this out? Did someone convince him to come back? Was he guilt tripped by his team incessantly? I have to know, because if you know you're going to be losing money on a per game basis, and all the leverage that you have comes from your team losing, then in my mind, it's going to take a heck of a lot to make me come out of that holdout. That if that's the leverage that I had to negotiate with, and this money was so important to me that I felt the need to hold out, then I can't just quit 2 games in. That's just me. Maybe I just double down on the nonsense and lose even more money while the team doesn't pay me. And you do have to set a hard line for, if the team doesn't pay me in X amount of time, then guess what? I do have to come back, because now I'm losing more money than I stand to gain. But that's just business principles in general. That if you start a business, there is a point at which you have to let go of a business if it begins to fail. There is a point where you lose so much money on a business that you can't resalvage it. And to double down means you just lose twice the money. Okay, that's just smart business. But was his line seriously 2 games? What point could you make in 2 games about how much they needed you? And when you come back, why on earth should they pay you? What leverage did if Cam Chancellor seriously believed that holding out for 2 games was going to convince the Seattle Seahawks to pay him, he never had any leverage in the first place. None. 4 games I get. That's a quarter of the season. That's a lot of damage done to a football team. If the team's not going to pay you after starting 0-4, they weren't going to pay you. Like, they really stood hard on that line and they were just not going to pay you. And it actually looks like Seattle really wasn't. And maybe he just caught wind of that. But your negotiations cannot have stopped after 2 weeks. Okay? There is a line there, but come on. But the Seattle Seahawks are 0-2, and the perception is that somebody needs to be blamed for something. The perception is that this team is out of control. And I remember reading the game when the game was ours, and that's a book with Magic Johnson and Larry Bird talking about their historic rivalry back in the 80s. And Magic Johnson played with Pat Riley, and Pat Riley, wherever he went, he's currently the president of basketball operations in Miami. He coached with the New York Knicks of the 90s, those great teams with Patrick Ewing and John Starks. And he coached the Showtime Lakers with Magic Johnson. Always talked about the disease of me. And that's what's happening in Seattle, that guys always want more. Now that we've won the championship, before you were hungry, before you would have stopped at nothing to win the title. Now that you have won the title, now it's time to get comfortable. Now it's time for me to get paid. Now it's time for me to look out for number 1. Okay? And to the Seattle Seahawks, eternal credit, to their credit, they have paid everybody. Most teams don't do that. Look at the Patriots. The Patriots never suffer from the disease of me because they don't pay anybody. If you don't want to be there, you can walk. We just need number 12. We just need Brady and Belichick, and we're good. The rest of you all can just go. The Patriots will pay you if you're Tom Brady. They'll pay you if you're Rob Gronkowski too. But everybody else, you're interchangeable. The Patriots haven't had a running back whose name I can remember in like half a decade. And outside of Randy Moss, they haven't had any elite receivers. You look at all the people that played with Tom Brady at wide receiver and then left Tom Brady outside of Moss, fell off a cliff. You can't find them anywhere. You cannot find them anywhere. You don't have this problem in New England, but you do have it in Seattle. And the Seahawks have paid everybody. That's the part that's blowing my mind, that everybody wants more. Everybody wants this, that, and the other thing. And the Seahawks have given it to them. Marshawn wanted more money. They gave it to him. Bennett wanted more money. They gave it to him. Chancellor wanted more money. They gave it to him. But the perception of it is, why are these guys so greedy? When the reality is, contracts in the NFL are one-sided. They're lopsided. They're very team strong. NFL contracts are not guaranteed contracts. A guy can weasel his way out of an NFL contract, sort of, but a team can just axe you if they don't like you, if you get hurt, if they no longer want you. You're done. You're seriously done. Finished. Completely. They're lopsided contracts, which is why NFL players trying to fight for more money, more guaranteed money, especially you look at contracts and you see lots of millions of dollars. Well, a lot of these millions are coming in the form of incentives on the contract. They're coming in the form of incentives. So you show up for all the weight trainings, and you get X amount of money, and you get this many sacks in the year and you get a bonus. So a lot of the money's not guaranteed. I remember people like to laugh at the Redskins for giving Albert Hainsworth $100 million in the contract that they had with him, where he turned out to be a bust and absolutely useless in every way for that team. He had about one good game. He had one good game with the Bears, and you were like, oh my goodness, this is what Albert Hainsworth looks like when he tries. But then you realize that 95% of the time, Albert Hainsworth ain't trying all that often. Dude was just not trying to work that hard. Then he ended up being a colossal bust for the team. I'm still mad about that. So I'd be on the record of saying that Albert Hainsworth, useless as a Redskin for all intents and purposes. Absolutely useless. But what people talk about that contract is that it was a $100 million contract. Well, it wasn't. It was a $40 million contract, which is still way too much money for him. Just a FYI, way too much money. Okay, they still deserve to be laughed at for signing him to that deal, but there was $60 million of that was not guaranteed. And Adrian Peterson is another guy that held out from training camp this season, and the Minnesota Vikings restructured his deal, and then he showed up to work. That Adrian Peterson didn't want to get paid more money, but Adrian Peterson had 4 more years on his deal, and not 1 cent of that was guaranteed. So if Adrian Peterson injured himself before, he wasn't going to see any of that money. The team could just cut him, and he wouldn't see any of the money. He had to earn all of that through bonuses, through a certain amount of rushing yards, certain amount of touchdowns, etc. He had to earn all of that through incentives. So he wanted that deal restructured to guaranteed money. I get it. So when players want more money, the reality of the issue is, yes, there's a little bit of greed there. And yes, a lot of times guys want to be paid their market value. I'm not going to look at another person on another team doing what I do and they don't do it better than me, getting paid more than me. I don't like that. I don't want that. You know, I'm not just starting out now. I don't need to gain experience. I want to make the money that I'm worth. It's the part of it is a pride thing as well. You want to get what you are worth. But a lot of times these guys are just trying to make sure that the money that they get is guaranteed to them in a way that many, many NFL contracts simply aren't. And we as fans look back on and sit on our butts. We don't go through the contract information. Okay, we're not perusing it. We don't know the details of the contracts. You can if you look it up, but we don't look that hard. We just want to make fun of Cam Chancellor for holding out. I think the way he did it was wrong. His plan gave him not nearly as much leverage as I thought he had. I thought he was willing to sit back and watch the Seahawks lose because that's the only leverage that he had. To be fair, that's huge leverage. I believe there was another article written on USA Today that talked about how that happened in the 90s with Jimmy Johnson when he was the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. Emmitt Smith held out for 2 games, and Jimmy Johnson lost his mind. Jimmy Johnson wanted Emmitt Smith back. He pushed the team to pay Emmitt Smith. The team paid Emmitt Smith. That's what happens. Emmitt Smith had the leverage to negotiate that. His coach desperately wanted him back. Okay, the Seahawks were a little more calm about this time. Cam Chancellor holds out, and head coach Pete Carroll just goes, "Well, I'd like to have him back. We really want him back, but he didn't make all the noise that Jimmy made back in the day." But our perception of the situation tends to often come off as reality, which is weird considering how much as sports fans, how little we actually know about many situations. This is Clutch with Keon Rose here on AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio. You report, the world decides. We'll be back.
Expect partly cloudy and warm weather out there through the afternoon. Still mainly dry for a while. Highs 83 to 85 tonight. Lows into the lower 60s. Another warm day on Thursday. Highs into the lower 80s with more clouds and a few late showers pushing in on Friday. Tonight, after the premiere of The Mysteries of Laura, starring Deborah Messing, a story ripped from the headlines. The 2-hour SVU premiere America will be talking about. Don't miss it tonight on NBC. And I'm WDEF News Falls Chief Meteorologist Patrick Orr on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Are you tired of feeling like just another account number to your financial advisor? Try something refreshingly different. Call Edward Jones Financial Advisor Patrick Neal in Hickson at 870-7894. Edward Jones, making sense of investing. Member SIPC.
We've got a table here at Delia's in Saudi Daisy, ready to delight in a plate of authentic Mexican food. Delia's spreads a rich selection, loaded nachos, crazy chicken, homemade tamales, maybe the enchiladas with beef, chicken, pork, quesadillas, every dish beautifully pictured on the menu to help us decide. Join us for lunch or dinner. We're at Delia's in Saudi Daisy on Dayton Pike near the Thrasher Light. Here's dinner. Delia's uses the freshest ingredients, cooked to perfection. Nachos, homemade. Delia's open every day except the Lord's Day. For lunch and dinner, treat yourself to Delia's genuine Mexican food. In Saudi, call 521-7145. That's 521-7145.
Here you are, working to keep your customers happy and to manage your cash flow. IRS problems are the last thing you need, but here they are, flapping about you like vultures. Get help from Eric Pelton and his team of accountants at E.J. Pelton Company. Audits, letters, proposed return changes, 1099s, penalty threats. Pelton Tax Resolution Services brings peace of mind and helps you keep more of what you've earned. EJPelton.com. Offices on Brainerd Road and in Saudi Daisy, just north of the Bilo. That's EJ Pelton. Call 622-3156. Think ahead, 622-3156. An alternative to insurance for people of Christian interest is Samaritan Ministries, a cost-sharing group whose fellow members contribute to your medical expenses. Hi, David Tulis here, member of Samaritan Ministries. I have no deductibles, no silly in-network rules. I choose my own doctors. I'm a cash payer and get the cash discount with med providers. I'm 100% compensated by Christian families around the nation who send their checks directly with a personal note and pray for me in my medical distress. I have a family membership. I write a $405 check every month to a person in need. Just love it. Learn more about Samaritan Ministries Tuesday, September 29 at 7 p.m. at Brainerd Hills Presbyterian Church on East Brainerd Road. It's a mini conference on the Christian alternative to medical insurance.
Hello, this is Keon Rose. You're listening to Clutch with Keon Rose, brought to you by the many, many advertisers of Hot News Talk Radio. If you'd like to hear your ad here, give us a call. And also, find us on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. We're all over. HotNewsTalkRadio.com. You can listen to us live. You can listen to us on the TuneIn Radio app in the Apple Store or the Google Play Store. It's entirely free. You download it, give us a follow, and press play, and you'll have Hot News Talk Radio everywhere you go. If you search Hot News Talk Radio in Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, we are the first thing that comes up. Our Twitter handle is at Hot News Radio, and we are talking about perception and reality. Started a little bit because we were talking about Yogi Berra, and he passed away today at the age of 90. And as we remember him, we also have to have that sports discussion of how great was he? How great was Yogi Berra? And he was pretty amazing. The man was 5'7" and one of the winningest baseball players ever. Nobody's been to more World Series than Yogi Berra. And we compare him to Derek Jeter. It is an obvious comparison. The Yogi Berra was a great Yankee in his time. Derek Jeter is a great Yankee, or was a great Yankee during this time. He retired a season ago. And the obvious comparison to that is, well, and I think everyone's going to tell you Jeter's better. Everyone that didn't see Berra is going to tell you that Jeter's better. I'm not going to tell you that because I looked at the numbers this morning, and Yogi Berra has better numbers. He's hit about 90 more home runs. He's got more hits. He's got a better slugging percentage. He just hit the ball better. Derek Jeter did a great thing in terms of getting on base more. That's huge. There's no downplaying that. Derek Jeter is great. Derek Jeter's amazing. And I say this as a person who has never watched Yogi Berra play, so that I do understand the hypocrisy of that statement. I'm not ballooning Yogi Berra's numbers and Yogi Berra's aura up to be something that it isn't, though. His numbers are better than Jeter's. And I think that we perceive that to be different because instead of landing somewhere in the middle, we have to pick a side. Okay, it's always going to be Shaq versus Wilt. It's always going to be Ali versus Tyson. It's always going to be LeBron versus MJ, even though they don't even play the same position. But one guy is great in this generation. The other guy is great in the last generation. So obviously, like children with toy soldiers, we have to make them fight. That's where we go with this. And we go with it very frequently. And we don't bother to correct anything. We don't bother to correct anything. I think about the ridiculousness of this, and nothing makes me more incredulous than prediction time in sports. For instance, like before the college football season started, Auburn was predicted to win the SEC. What was the point of that? Because first off, it looks like Auburn's not even will Auburn win 6 games this year? Because we thought they were a whole lot better than what they turned out to be. And LSU just cleaned their clock. They nearly lost to Jacksonville State. I can't name any of the players of Jacksonville State. No disrespect to Jacksonville State, but I can't. And the point of predicting that Auburn would win the SEC at the beginning of the season was what exactly? What was the point of that? And I see it again. I'm watching. I'm reading NBA news because we're a little bit more than a month out from the beginning of the NBA season. It's about to be back, and so I'm looking at stuff, and something bothered me. I was looking at this article, and the article was predicting the stats of the NBA rookies that were coming in this season for the whole season. You know, how many points per game would they average? How many assists per game? How many rebounds? And I'm like, what purpose? Wake me up when the games start. What purpose is there to trying to predict something with that level of specificity? To what end? There's one of two things happens there. Either you are entirely wrong, which is more likely, by the way, than not, or you hit the nail on the head. Yes, Justice Winslow is averaging 13.2 games like I said he would. Am I not a sage? Am I not a guru now? But no, you just threw numbers out there. You have no idea how this is going to play out. You don't know who's going to get injured. You don't know who's going to develop, who's going to bloom late. You have no idea. What is the point of predicting this? Why not just watch the games? I just see what happens. But we have to build a perception so that when Justice Winslow is not averaging 13.2 points a game and say he averages 7, which is still not out of the realm of possibility because he is a rookie, then we can talk about how disappointed we are in Justice Winslow and how he didn't meet the expectations that we had, or Jahlil Okafor, or whomever. That we're now disappointed in Auburn, and we wouldn't have been if we didn't make up expectations out of nowhere on something, by the way, that is, I mean, there's a degree of randomness to the game of football, to the game of baseball, to the game of basketball. There are degrees of randomness, things that just happen that are not in the control of anybody. You know, I was listening to the radio and I heard an interesting stat. The New York Jets have recovered 8 fumbles in the first 2 games There have been 8 fumbles, and the Jets have recovered all of them. That's just luck. Once the ball gets fumbled and it's just bouncing around, anybody can get it, right? And the Jets are 2-0, and Jets fans are pleased and happy, and look how far the Jets can go with Ryan Fitzpatrick as their quarterback. Why? Like, there's randomness involved in this thing. Why are we trying to predict it from the start? Do we not see how crazy that is? There is entertainment in it. That's why Mr. Judd and I do our picks. It's more for fun. Just, am I wrong? Am I right? But how specific do you need to be? Like, what possible fun and enjoyment do you get out of trying to figure out how many points per game Jahlil Okafor will average as a rookie in the NBA? And what do you gain out of being exact about that? Are you betting on it? Because that's not a betting line I've ever seen. Sure, over under, but you're just saying, 13.2. Yeah. To what end and for what purpose? It's pointlessness. The sports media does it all the time, and they're totally cool with it because we just have to have stuff to talk about. You know, I was reading this webcomic. It's called XKCD. It's a pretty funny webcomic. It's very sarcastic, very sardonic, kind of dark. It's mostly stick figures, but they make a lot of commentary about life in a very sarcastic way. And one thing that they did was they had 2 sports anchors sitting at a desk, and one anchor says, let's pull a bunch of numbers out of a random number generator. And then the next host says, great, that sounds delightful. Now let's add narrative to it. That's what we do in sports. We find numbers, we add stories to them. But that's being human. We turn everything into a story. That's part of your personality and will determine your personality type. I read it in National Geographic earlier this year. They had a personality issue in their magazine, and one of the important factors of your personality is your narrative. That these things that happen to you in your life, which you perceive to be happening with cause and happening with reason, may just be things that happened. But what determines your personality is what story you build around that. And that you can be a negative person if you build a negative story around the things that have happened to you. And you can be a positive person if you build a positive story around the things that have happened to you. Not that everything in life is random and pointless. That's not my point. But that things happen in life that do not necessarily have a discernible cause, but you add a story to it. So it's not just sports that does this, but sports do this to a higher degree because we have numbers to look at. So we see trends. And despite the fact that these trends may not necessarily mean anything, we ascribe story to it because we have to, because we cannot help ourselves, and because there wouldn't be anything else to talk about otherwise. And we talk about Peyton Manning and how his numbers have gone down over the last 10 games or so that he's played. What we have to ascribe to that is, oh, look how old he is. He's declining. And what would we attribute to that if Peyton Manning were to suddenly rattle off a bunch of 4 touchdown games? If his next 6 games, Peyton Manning averaged 3 touchdowns a game and 280 yards and 2 touchdowns, 2 or 3 touchdowns. Like what would we attribute to that then? There would be a story there. We would talk about how Peyton Manning dug deep and rejuvenated something about his career because we must perceive it to be so. And therefore it has to be real. That we ignore these things. And I understand that I'm saying this after yesterday saying we ignore numbers too much, but we often overreact in either direction. That sometimes we rely on numbers too much and we take away the human element. And sometimes we don't rely on numbers enough, and we rely on pure narrative. during the NBA Finals is a good example because the Golden State Warriors ended up winning the NBA Finals, but they played very, very badly during the first 3 games of the NBA Finals. If you recall, they didn't play very well. They won the first one in overtime, barely. And Iman Shumpert 3 just goes wide of the basket. Otherwise, the Warriors could have lost that one too, and we may be talking about a different series entirely. But a lot of the people were like, look how much Matthew Dellavedova is shutting Steph Curry down, and Steph Curry can't get a shot off. But I was watching those games and going, I don't see that. Steph Curry is missing a lot of shots that he would typically make. Wide open shots, not just him, but many of his teammates, including Harrison Barnes, who was making corner threes all season long and could not seem to find the basket. If the basket were the size of the ocean, he would have missed it in those first 3 games. And Curry was missing shots, and Thompson was missing shots that these Warriors do not typically miss. And a lot of the narrative, because we threw away the numbers, we threw away statistically what Golden State is able to do shooting the basketball, and we just trusted our eyes and said the Warriors are being shut down, and could they be upset in these NBA Finals? Well, that ended up not happening, because what happened in games 3, 4, 5, and 6 were that the Warriors made shots that they were missing, but that they typically make. That if you looked at the stats, if you looked at the numbers, the Warriors typically make these shots. They are missing shots that are open. And then we go too far. We either ignore the numbers and just run on pure narrative, or we ignore the narrative and just go on pure numbers. Well, no, you can't live in either extreme. Like, not just in sports, in real life, you cannot live in either extreme. And that article from yesterday that we talked about, the one in which you'll have a badge by the company Humanize that tracks your posture and tracks your heart rate and tracks your voice intonation and tracks all of these things in order to measure workplace productivity. What bothers me the most about that, honestly, is that it does take away the fact that there are people involved. That you can like we as humans judge things based on voice intonation and based on posture. But a person slouching is not universal. It means different things to different people. If I have a client and I've been working with them for years and I slouch, that doesn't mean that I'm not capable of retaining them as a client. Might be different to somebody else. So there's a middle ground there that we very often miss, because what we want what we perceive to be real. And we don't want to do all of this work. And the fact that what happens in an NFL front office or an NBA front office, not only do we have no control over these things, we don't really understand what's happening behind those closed doors. But we want it to be real. We want what we think to be real. You've been listening to Clutch with Keon Rose. I'm Keon Rose. This is AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. See you tomorrow.
Expect partly cloudy and warm weather out there through the afternoon. Still mainly dry for a while. Highs 83 to 85 tonight. Lows into the lower 60s. Another warm day on Thursday. Highs into the lower 80s with more clouds and a few late showers pushing in on Friday. Tonight, after the premiere of The Mysteries
You
of
give
Water,
us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
WSDT Sunny Daisy, Chattanooga. CBS News, I'm Harley Carr. Those are bishops cheering the Pope after this morning's worship service in Washington, D.C. CBS's Barry Bagnotto is there.
At a cathedral prayer service, some 300 American bishops sat where parishioners normally do, in pews, listening as their pastor urged them through a translator to confront controversial issues, protecting, quote, innocent victims of abortion, welcoming immigrants.
These people will enrich America and its church.
And conserving
the environment devastated by man's predatory relationship with nature.
And he prayed the crimes of abuse by priests in America will never be repeated. Barry Bagnetto, CBS News, Washington.
Coming up, an outdoor mass.
Pope Francis will canonize Junipero Serra at this outdoor mass. Father Manuel Durantes.
He left a comfortable home in Spain with lots of risk involved to bring Jesus to this continent.
Tens of thousands of lines for the chance to celebrate Mass with the Pope.
He's offering a change of heart, is something different, that he's getting closer to his flock, to the people that he represents.
Andrew Mullenbeck for CBS News, Washington.
The government says Chinese hackers evidently stole millions more people's personal data than had been thought.
I'm Jim Taylor. Government already said the identities of more than 1 million people had been compromised, people who applied for or received a federal security clearance, but that 1.1 million person figure